I think the racist abuse that Sterling got at Chelsea was repulsive, and the culprit should be banned for life, and I think that he probably will be. You know, I worked in Fleet Street almost all my life, and I don't see racist headlines. I see the same kind of stuff that I saw with Wayne Rooney, with Gaza, with David Beckham, and they were all white players. If you're an England superstar, the papers talk about you, and a lot of it is trivial nonsense. That's my argument.
Well, listen, and I hear what you're saying because you were at the paper when I joined the Daily Mirror, and you were part of the decision-making to give me a licence to talk about the lack of black managers in the game and the problems with race and the inability to protect black players within the game from racial abuse. And since then, 2000, it's been 18 years and the landscape hasn't really changed. What's changed is the players' willingness to talk about it. If you go back to the 70s, where players were described in terms of their physicality, all muscles and physicality and limbs and arms, but no brains. And players since then have not been able to respond when they've been maligned, when they've been dismissed, where they've been, in some cases, humiliated.
But I applaud Sterling in that, and I agree with you. I applaud Sterling for coming out. I think it's a courageous thing to do. He seems to have himself matured a lot in recent years. I don't think he's blameless. I remember a period he went through, he dived every 2 minutes and got rightly criticised for it. I didn't like his gun tattoo, for example. It's an arguable point. Some understood why he did it. So there are things that Sterling's done, which is a high-profile England player. I think he thoroughly deserves criticism, personally. Not because he's black, but because he's an England star doing stuff I think is divisive. However, and let's bring in Clarke here, the central point here is not... I think everyone agrees the racist abuse he got in the terraces is disgusting. It's shocking because it doesn't happen as much as it used to, but there's an underbelly still lurking, I think, at a number of grounds where players get this, right? But putting that to one side, because I think most rational people agree that that's disgusting. The allegation that the media are racist to Raheem Sterling and other black players, I find that hard to agree with.
One of the hardest things to evidence is subconscious racism. It's the hardest thing to evidence because you're trying to talk about a person's thought process and how they've come to their conclusion. And how do you bring evidence of the conditioning that a person has been brought up with? You can't bring evidence of that. Now, here, Raheem Sterling has brought us the perfect example to juxtapose a white player's situation and a black player's situation.
The journalist who wrote that for the Mail, the contentious one, he's not white himself. He's, I believe, an Asian journalist, right? And he did a number of tweets yesterday explaining that there was not a racial thought in his body. What had happened was there was a big furore at the time over a big report that had come out about the number of young players who were earning vast sums of money.
Let
me finish. In that context, he did a story in which he said, look, this kid hasn't even played Premier League football and is buying a £2.5 million house, right? I actually think that's quite interesting and indicative of an issue in the game.
Piers. 2 points in here. First of all, the two journalists in question, they don't write their own headlines. So there's one subline editor.
The journalist thought the headline was fine. He said that yesterday.
The headline writer, that's the person who has put these two very differing headlines.
But they're not, though, because Foden's a more established player, so it's not shocking that he could afford to buy a £2 million house.
It implies that it's undeserved.
I know Ian Herbert, I know he's a terrific journalist. I have no compunction whatsoever about saying that. But what I will say... What I will say is this. We're focusing on two particular pieces. And the piece I've written today for the Daily Mirror basically says we're in a culture. It's a culture. So when I talked about those players years ago and the way that they were described negatively. It's the language. Sometimes you don't have to use words like black. You don't have to be on terraces shouting abuse.
I get that.
A culture is
And you are one of the very few black journalists writing about football.
When I joined the Daily Mirror, and I went from working for a local newspaper to working for a national newspaper where you paid me very well, thank you very much, and I spent money. What's the problem?
I don't think the papers have a problem. I see no evidence that the papers have a problem with...
Listen, we're bandying about words like prejudice and racism, and what the point that Sterling is trying to make is that when we come when we have built up over time language that reinforces negative stereotypes, language that tries to make black
Piers,
players know their place.
You know, you highlight the point in its entirety. There's a conditioning that's gone through that lighter is better, and that informs our decision making. It's the conditioning that meant that my father, who was a hard-working, incredible man, but an imposing black man in the 70s, could never get a job despite his work ethic and capability. Just please hear me out.
Right.
Now, this issue evolves. It evolves from the overt racism that you can quite clearly say is unacceptable on that stand, in the stands there, to today. Now, what has informed your decision-making? It's you growing up in a household where, yes, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, it was OK to say that white is better. But it's not anymore.
No.
But these are still the conditions that are put in your mind, not only yours, Piers, but mine as a second and third... Please hear me out.
Right,
as a second and third generation immigrant, where my father was dominant, authoritarian, but when he went out of the house, he had to be subservient to the white man in order to be able to walk down the street with his wife.
Right, but as Darren will tell you...
No, there's a wider issue here, Piers, and you're missing it.
Fine, but at some stage you have to let me talk, right? And I would say that, Darren, you and I worked together a long time at the Mirror. The Mirror was at the vanguard of driving out racism in football. We campaigned for it. We believed in it passionately. I believe in it passionately. I said yesterday, most of my favourite footballers in the world that I've worshipped are black footballers, right? The idea that somehow I don't want things to be so much better than they've been, than seeing these scumbags at Chelsea yesterday abusing Raheem Sterling is ridiculous. However, that is different to whether the media attention on Sterling is driven by racism.
But what we have to accept, and the way forward, is to accept that words matter, language matters.
I agree with that.
The treatment that we give issues like this.
And more black journalists actually writing about football in this country in proportion to the number of black players playing the game.
And we need more black people at the at the top of the decision-making process in broadcast media.
As a nation, Darren, we need to think about our thinking. What's informed your decision-making processes? As you've grown up in your household, what's conditioned your thinking?
I get that.
Until we start to think about that, Piers, we cannot combat latent... Let me give you a prime example. I was at an award ceremony on the South Bank, stood in the foyer. A man walked past the guy who was stood in security outfit, walked straight to me in my suit and said, "Where's the cloakroom?" I said, "It's probably there next to your casual racism." I was actually there to pick up an award.
It's in the video of Raheem Sterling being abused by this Chelsea fan. You will notice that there was a black fan literally standing 3 away from this guy. And we've got him on the phone now. His name is Nathan Lewis. He is that black Chelsea fan. Nathan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Piers.
So you sent me a very thoughtful message last night, because obviously there's been a huge furore about all this. And one of the questions people have been asking is, well, why was the black fan standing literally 3 away from this guy, not as apparently outraged as the rest of us? Tell us from your point of view what you make of all this.
OK, so obviously I was at the game and Raheem Sterling was getting a lot of abuse from all sections. However, I have to be honest and say I didn't actually hear any racial abuse whatsoever. And so, like you said, a lot of people have been questioning me and my integrity as to why I didn't get involved, why I didn't react. But I didn't actually hear anything racial from any section of the crowd, to be fair. But that, again, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's, there's 40,000 people there shouting from all different directions. So, I just didn't hear it at the time.
Right. Now, you said to me that the people concerned, the one who was screaming the abuse has been identified, that they were getting sent messages by their partners or whatever saying, "You're on telly, blah, blah, blah," and they were finding it all quite funny.
Yeah, so we all knew it was on TV because the camera was in front of us, and people were getting texts through, messages through, showing that we were on TV, and they found it quite funny that we were on TV. So they knew that we were on TV and something had happened and we'd been seen. But again, at that time, I never knew it was of a racial nature at that point.
Now that you do know, Nathan, what do you feel as a black Chelsea fan? And Chelsea used to have a lot of problem with racism, but, like most clubs, it seems to have improved over the years. And this is pretty horrifying, a throwback to what it used to be like in the dinosaur days. But when you see a guy literally standing 3 feet away from you, screaming racial abuse at a player like Sterling, what do you think of it?
I think it's obviously disgusting, you know. I'm right there, like you said, 3 feet away from him, and he's got no disregard for me. Obviously, Sterling either.
Reports of racism have gone up 53%. And I think as far as our industry is concerned, we have to work together. Let me just reiterate, racism isn't necessarily just what we saw at Stamford Bridge or in the North London Derby. Racism can be in the way we construct reports. It can be in the airtime we give to situations just like this. It's insidious, it's institutionalised.
Well, giving it airtime like this to debate it, actually, I think is a good thing, right?
It's definitely a good thing, and this is far too important an issue to obfuscate it with such a superficial angle. Look, Piers, you have a platform here to speak to millions upon millions of people.
We have a platform.
We now, as invited guests, to contribute to that. But it's your view and opinion, and the ladies and the rest of the team and Ben, on a daily basis. Now, if you are of the mindset that you think that what we're suggesting is trivial and doesn't matter, that's the view that you will portray on a daily basis to tens of millions of people. And that can be the only way that their argument is informed. Or by a newspaper headline. You know how many people don't read past headlines. Headlines inform opinions. Now, if these are headlines and opinions that aren't people who are aware of their unconscious bias, then that is how it's perpetuated.
Clarke, Darren, I appreciate we're going to leave it there.